G'day guys, how are we doing? Welcome to the weekly roundup. It is Friday, July the 19th, 2024. And it was a bit of a quiet start to the week, but as the week's gone on, more and more news has come to hand, both here in Australia and on the world scene. Probably the biggest news this week in Australia has been the announcement that Tim Tszyu will return on September the 22nd, most likely in Sydney. There was a little bit of talk that it might be Melbourne, Brisbane, Gold Coast, wherever it might be. But if you look at the No Limit website, it does look like Sydney is the place that it will happen. Of course, it could change, but it's a little bit interesting. I will say that we had Nikita and Tim the day before saying, make sure you tune in tomorrow. Big fight announcements. Nikita's fight was obviously announced. I'll get to that in a second, but it was more so that Tim's returning on September 22nd. That's a Sunday, by the way. It's obviously because of the American TV schedule. They want to be Saturday night in prime time, which is great. It's always the way it's been. But there was only a list of maybe potential opponents announced rather than this is who he's fighting. And let's not forget, we're only, I think, about 9 weeks away. Might be 9 weeks away, so it's not a long time. So I'm not quite sure when they will actually announce that event or the opponent. The opponent so far, will say the list that have sort of been thrown around. Erickson Lubin seems to be the front runner. Jesus Ramos is another one that they might be looking at. Jamel Charlo, and is a bit of a, I would say, a very long shot, and even a longer shot is Sebastian Fundora. And the reason why Fundora, I doubt, will be available because, as far as I knew, his fight with Errol Spence was locked and loaded. I know we haven't had an official announcement yet, but as far as I knew, it was a done deal. And Jamel Charlo, well, it's been by the time that fight happens, it will be almost a year since he lost to Canelo Alvarez. So not quite sure where Charlo's at, and I think we can just put him aside for the time being. So it really comes down to Erickson Lubin and Jesus Ramos. I did actually think that Lubin might be the man. He's ranked. This is another anomaly in the rankings. The number 1 and 2 rankings are vacant. Now, I've said it on my shows numerous times. I don't know how you can have rankings that are vacant, but the number 1 and 2 rankings in the IBF I'm talking about are vacant. So work that out for yourself. But we have Tim Tszyu and Erickson Lubin in the number 3 and 4 positions. Now, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just have them as 1 and 2, but hey, the IBF have got them at 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 are blank at the moment. So I would have thought that would have made the most sense with the IBF champion Mikhailovic. I always get that wrong, all the Russian names. You know who I'm talking about, the IBF champion. Hasn't got anything locked in at the moment. So I think the road for Tim, and it does make a lot of sense, beat Erickson Lubin, become the number 1 mandatory challenger, and he gets his crack at the IBF champion, Mikhailovic, whatever it is. So that would make the most sense. Although Jesus Ramos has actually emerged as maybe someone that might be a little bit closer than what we thought, because Lubin has apparently raised some concerns about coming here to Australia to fight Tim Tszyu. Now, I wouldn't have thought Erickson Lubin would be in much of a position to debate or negotiate, whatever you want to call it. I think he's very much the B side in this deal with Tim Tszyu. And if that is the case, then I would say that maybe Jesus Ramos does get the gig. I think he is ranked number 6, it might be. I think number 5 was Josh Kelly, who's got a fight obviously lined up with Liam Smith later in the year. So if it doesn't happen, then it might be Ramos and Tim Tszyu will fight for the mandatory shot at Mikhailovic, whatever it is, Mikhailovic. I know it's probably going to be in the comments there somewhere. There's Russian names. It's hard enough with the Thai names, let alone the not Japanese names. They're hard as well, but also the Russians are pretty tough. So anyway, there is a July 30 deadline, by the way, on that IBF opponent. So I'm sure, knowing No Limit, even though I have been critical in the past of a lot of their dealings, one thing that they do well is they don't muck around, they get it done. So I would assume that now they've actually announced this date, and Tim's, of course, he's, from what I hear, a very, very, I won't say pushy, but he's a very determined, strong-willed type of guy, and now that date's locked in, he's going to be demanding that he gets an opponent ASAP. And look, I think No Limit and his manager, Glenn Jennings, have showed in the past that they do get the job done. They get the right opponents for Tim. So I have no doubt whatsoever within a week or so we will have an opponent locked in. I'm still thinking Lubin might be the guy, but as I said, Ramos may be just the dark horse. And I think you can put a line through Charlo and Fundora at this stage. So on to little brother, Nikita Zoo. 9-0, he's going to take on Koen Mazudia, who's 12-3-1 on Wednesday, August 28th. Now, that will be a main event pay-per-view or KO pay-per-view. That'll be for the Australian 154-pound title. So, not a lot of details yet. I don't think the location has been announced, or let alone the undercard, but there has been rumours that Michael Zarafa, well, it's not really rumours, I think it's pretty much done. It just hasn't been officially announced by No Limit, but Michael Zarafa and Tommy Brown will fight on the undercard. Now, it's my first reaction to that would be to probably, if I was drinking coffee now, I would spit it all out over the computer screen and think, what are you doing, Michael? But and No Limit, by the way. But I do get it. If you look at the storyline, as you will, what will happen is that No Limit obviously want to have Michael Zarafa there for a potential Nikita Zoo fight. I would think that they would want Michael to win this fight against Tommy Brown, who I'm sure they will build up into one of the former greats of Australian boxing. And that's fine. The promoters, that's why they call them promoters. They promote their events and their fighters. And then they would look to have him fight Nikita Zoo maybe next or possibly the one after that. So, yeah, some interesting times ahead. And I think actually the ideal scenario would still be for Michael to fight Tim Zoo, but I think that ship has well and truly sailed now. I think that Michael Zarafa is damaged goods. Tim Zoo, regardless of what happened in his last fight, is still big business in Australian boxing. He's the biggest name here by an absolute mile. In all due respect to Jaya Pataya and Liam Paro and George Kambosos and the Maloney twins, maybe Sam Goodman, it's still Tim Zoo. He is the man. And I just don't know why, with all those massive fights that are looming out there for Tim Zoo, why he would even look at a guy that was absolutely embarrassed on the big stage. And I say that respectfully, if you can say respectfully that he was embarrassed, but you all saw it, you know what I'm talking about, to be absolutely obliterated in 2 rounds in Vegas. It would not have gone down well with Team Zoo or Tim Zoo, and I would think that No Limit would probably know that, and they would look at Nikita Zoo as being the next option, and I think that fight does actually make a lot of sense. I think it would be a big fight here in Australia, massive pay-per-view. The Zoo versus Rafa thing would still be in play, and I think it would carry a lot of weight, but it would be little brother instead of big brother. So I'm sure that storyline will take its course over the next few months. On Saturday night, which is tomorrow night here, the Premier Boxing Series is back in a really good event. It's on the Gold Coast at the Southport Sharks Football Club. It's Jalen Tate, 15-0. He'll put his IBF Australasian lightweight or 135-pound title on the line against former Olympian Ibrahim Bala, who's 16-2. I really like this fight. Bala coming off a or an upset, but a very, very good win, 10-round decision over Yusuf Dib back in December of 2023. Tate had a harder time. It was a little bit controversial, but he did have a tough time against Alexander Espinoza back in March of this year. But I think it's a really good all-Aussie matchup, and this is exactly what we want to see on these cards, especially these Premier Boxing Series events, and of course the Ace Boxing. Not Ace Boxing, the No Limit Boxing, No Limit on Fox events they do. Some really good matchups here. On the undercard, we've got Shay Keneally. She's 4-0. She's going to fight Angie Rolcher, who's 4-Del Rocker, 14-4-3. That's for the WBA World Light Heavyweight Female title. So all the best to Shay in that event or that fight. And also on the undercard, Dylan Biggs makes his long-awaited return. He's going to take on Marcus Haywood. Biggs is 10-1. Haywood is 9-6-2. Biggs, of course, hasn't fought since being stopped by Nikita Zoo. So looking forward to him being back. I think he's a very good talent. I think it probably showed him more where he was at last time. I think he might have got a pretty harsh reality check about where he is at his career, but he's only a young guy, and I think I'm not necessarily going to say he could go on to world honours, but I think he's definitely a good young Aussie fighter to keep an eye on, and I don't think it was a real gauge of his ability against Nikita. I think he's capable of a lot more than that. He just probably wasn't ready for that jump at this stage of his career, even though he was 10-0 at 21, 22 years of age, just a maybe a step too far at that stage. But Marcus Hayward, look, at 9-6-2, good journeyman to come back against. That should be a good fight. Marcus Hayward has talked it up a fair bit, so I'm sure he'll come to fight, and should be a good, tough fight between those two. And then the other one, this is one I actually am looking forward to as well, Rocky Ogden against Cheng Yang. So Ogden 6-1. That one loss was against Yang in his last fight. Yang 7-4, got the upset knockout win over Rocky Ogden, and by all accounts, Rocky is really looking to get revenge for that loss, and I think we'll see some fireworks in that one. So a really good event, really good card of boxing, as they always do with Ace Boxing. So that is on the 7 Plus app. So it's free to get. The card's free. Make sure you get it and check it out and support Aussie boxing, and put as many eyeballs on this event as we can. On to the world scene. Well, a big weekend in boxing, especially over in Japan. We've got Junto Nakatani, 27-0. He's going to take on Vincent Astrolabio, 19-4, in defense of the WBC 118-pound title. This event is in Tokyo. And it's interesting that both of these guys fought within a week of each other last year against the Maloney twins. Nakatani, of course, with that 12th round knockout of Andrew Maloney. Vincent Astrolabio with the 12-round decision loss to Jason Maloney. So it's interesting now that just over a year later, these two guys are going to fight for a world title. I think it'll be, as they always do in Japan, a really great event, a really good fight. I think Nakatani wins the fight very comfortably, though, although Astrolabio is a very, very tough guy. I know he'll come to fight, but I think Nakatani will get the job done there, possibly with a late round stoppage, I would think. On the undercard, Kosei Tanaka, 20 wins and 1 loss. He'll take on Jonathan Rodriguez, who's 25-2-1. That's for the WBO 115-pound title or super flyweight. And one other world title fight on that card, Riku Kano will fight Anthony Oscawaga. I think I got that right, for the WBO 112-pound title, which is the flyweight, or is it light flyweight, whatever it is, 112 pounds, WBO version. So I'm not sure whether that's on Australian TV. Just check your guides. If it is, it will most likely be either on ESPN or DAZN. I'm thinking, actually, it will be ESPN because it's a top rank event. So check that out on the local guides here in Australia. Let's hope it's on probably Sunday morning, or is it Saturday night, whatever it might be again. Check your guides. Last weekend, of course, Shakur Stevenson got the win. Very uneventful win, but he's now been ordered to fight William Zapeta in what will be a real challenge for the undefeated Stevenson. He's 22-0. Zapeta is 31-0. Purse bids will go on, I think it's August the 20th. It's going to be a little bit tricky, this one, because it has been sort of mooted so far that it will be a 70-30 split in favour of Shakur Stevenson. There's no way that Oscar De La Hoya is going to accept that. That is William Zapeta's promoter, of course. And I think realistically we could see a 60-40, if not a 55-45 split there. That's if the fight actually takes place. Of course, promoters have got to actually bid on the event. We've seen it, was it last one with Devin Haney's failed bid, his last purse bid. He ended up just sitting out for that one. Can't remember who it was going to be. Slips my mind at the moment. But either way, only Top Rank actually bid on that fight. So let's see if we get similar on this one. But I'm sure with such an attractive fight that someone will bid. Most likely, I would say Golden Boy, considering that Shakur Stevenson hasn't got a promoter at the moment. It's an interesting one with Shakur Stevenson as well, because there was talk that maybe Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, was going to be the front runner to get his services, but it's now actually been revealed that maybe he might go back to Top Rank. And that's because he, in this cryptic age of social media, he actually complimented Bob Arum on his job on the last event. So maybe he's just keeping the door open that he could go back if things don't work out. But either way, what a fight that would be. Probably aside from Tank Davis and Vasily Lomachenko, this would be the biggest fight in the division. So, yeah, let's see what happens there. Another former champion on the comeback trail, Caleb Plant, the former 168-pound world champion, 22-2. He's going to take on Trevor McCumbee, who's 28-0. That's on August 17th in Orlando, Florida. And also on that card, Stephen Fulton will make a return after that brutal knockout loss to Naoya Inoue. He's going to take on Ronnie Rios over 10 rounds on the undercard. So good to see both of those guys back. I didn't realise actually Caleb Plant had been out so long, but he has since that decision loss to David Benavidez. So great to have him back, and maybe there's some good fights or big fights left for both of these guys in their respective divisions. Another big fight that's been announced. Is it a big fight? Another fight featuring a big name has been announced this week. It is the aforementioned Naoya Inoue, 27-0. He's going to defend his undisputed 122-pound titles against TJ Doan, former, I think it was IBF world champion. This one almost made me fall off my chair. Inoue, of course, the man in world boxing at the moment, aside from Usyk and maybe Crawford as well. But TJ Doan, he's on a 3-fight winning streak at the moment, but did lose to Sam Goodman last year in a pretty one-sided decision loss. He has had the 3 fights in Japan, let's just say against lesser light competition. So maybe they've just been looking at this fight to give, in a way, maybe just an in-between fight, a tune-up fight, whatever you might want to call it. And Doan, he's very well known to Japanese fans, fits the bill to throw in there and be a little bit of a sacrificial lamb for Inoue. But either way, I don't begrudge Naoya Inoue at all. He's fought all the top guys over the last few years, and I think if anyone's earned, let's just say, an easier fight than TJ Doan, he fits the bill. Former world champion, tough, durable. I'm sure he'll give his best, but I'm not sure he will give Naoya Inoue many troubles. And for me, it's got probably 2, 3, 4 rounds written all over that one. But let's hope TJ Doan, he's a bit of an honorary Aussie. He's Irish, but he has been fighting out of Australia. Mike Altamura, of course, is his manager. So we'll adopt him if he wins, of course. If he loses, well, he's just the Irishman. But no, all jokes aside, we wish him all the best. And should be a good card. That's September 3, by the way, Tokyo, Japan. Because on the undercard, we've got another world title fight and actually another Aussie on the card that I'll just get to in a second. The world title fight is Yoshiki Takai, 9-0. He's going to defend the title that he won against Jason Maloney, the WBO 118-pound belt, against Daigo Higa, who's 21-2-1. And the Aussie on the undercard that hasn't really been announced or anything that I've seen so far is Camille Bella, the brother of Ibrahim Bella, who's fighting this weekend, 15-1-1. Now he's going to fight Jin Sasaki, I should say, Jin Sasaki, who's 17-1-1 over 12 rounds for the OPBF and WBO Asia Pacific 147-pound title. So as I said, I hadn't seen any of this on any of the other social platforms here in Australia, but I just happened to stumble across it while going through the event on BoxRec. So yeah, Camille Bella, he was out of the ring for a little while. He has had a couple of sort of easier fights to get him back into the swing of things, a little bit like his brother Ibrahim. But now he's got a big opportunity to make a big splash on a big card. So that's Jin Sasaki for the OPBF and WBO Asia Pacific 147-pound title. So look out for that card as well. Canelo Alvarez, there's been talk with him lately. Now, we don't know whether he's going to be fighting on the Mexican Independence Day weekend, which is September 14th, September 15th here in Australia. The UFC have a big event on that weekend or the same night at the Las Vegas Sphere. They reckon it'll be the biggest UFC event they've ever held, so it's a tough one going up against that one. But there is talk that the opponent could be Chris Eubank Jr., and if that is the case, they might even go on that date or maybe a week before or a couple of weeks later or whatever it might be in London, England, or somewhere in England anyway. The issue that they've got with it, though, is if it is around that time in whether it be early, mid, or even late September, is that the Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois fight is on the 21st of September. So whether they go up against that or around the same time, a week before, week after, is sort of up for debate because I wouldn't have thought they would have wanted to go to the well too many times. The Dubois and Joshua fight is massive news in England, massive gate expected, pay-per-views, all that sort of stuff. So would they want to put a Canelo, Eubank Jr. around the same time and maybe cannibalise ticket sales or pay-per-view sales? Who knows? But there is another rumour actually getting, and sorry, the other name that has been thrown around is Edgar Berlanga. If that fight happened, it would be in the States. But again, timing is the other issue. But there has been a couple of rumours thrown around that they might actually pull Canelo Alvarez out of that September date and wait until November to take on the man that we've all been waiting for him to fight, and that's David Benavidez. Just a few jungle drums beating around the boxing world at the moment. Haven't seen anything remotely official being talked about, by the way. This is just other YouTubers and podcasters and experts or whatever you might want to call them. So, but that is just a little bit of a rumor at the moment. Let's see if it gathers momentum. But for me, it would actually make sense because I'm sure as much as Canelo, with the ego that he has, that he would more than fancy himself going up against the UFC or Joshua and Dubois in England, whatever it might be. But if you look at it that way, if cooler heads prevail, it does make sense to pull Canelo out, wait till the end of the year. He still gets his 2 fights for the year, which he always does. Just pull him out to October, November, whatever it might be, and put him in for the Benavidez fight, who would have had 6 months off by that stage. Let's just keep an eye on that one. Another thing I'm sure everyone knows about this one, the Usyk and Fury rematch has been confirmed for December 21st in Riyadh. I know it had been mentioned and discussed, but it has been made official that the Alexander Usyk-Tyson Fury rematch, December 21 in Riyadh. And what a week that will be, obviously Christmas week. So I can't wait for that one. It'll come around pretty quick. Another fighter that was back last week, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. He had a 10th round stoppage of Robert Barrera, improved to 52-4. There is talk that maybe there will be Jesse Bam Rodriguez next. That is the rumours going around at the moment. So they have obviously been sparring recently for both of these fights. So there was talk that maybe they might put a line through it. But in this business, and we're seeing it with the Paro and George Kambosos situation at the moment, where they're friends and sparring partners, whatever it might be, getting mentioned to talk. It's funny what happens when there's lots of money and world titles at stake. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. And it would actually make sense. It would probably put a full stop on the Jesse Bam Rodriguez confirmation as the new era of boxing. He's cleaned out all the previous greats. I know there is, by the way, the Estrada rematch that might be pending as well. Estrada did say he wanted that rematch. Whether or not it happens or he gets paid to step aside, we'll see. But I think that would put the full stop on the whole passing of the torch situation. Bam Rodriguez to beat Chocolatito and take the mantle as the king of the little man. Now, I know you might say, it might be in a way, we'll call him the mid-range man anyway, but you know, there's room for them all anyway. So, guys, that's about it for this week's news or the weekly roundup. I don't think I've missed anything. If I have, let me know down below. And as always, we'll see you next Friday for all the news around the boxing world, both here in Australia and abroad for our weekly roundup. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.